How do you organize your design iterations?
Ooh, that's a good question. What I typically do is I have a page in a file called Andrew Space. This is assuming this is a project where maybe there's multiple designers collaborating together. So I like to just give myself a page. And in here, what I do is I just write whatever it is I'm designing and the date. And honestly, you can see this page just goes on forever. And many of the things that I have designed here, you'll probably see it come up again. For example, here's canvassed and list headers. And then sure enough, the next week, here it is again. What's important here is that I didn't just overwrite or delete those previous iterations. I keep them there for like archival purposes almost. This is my answer to
Folks, welcome to Sneak Peek. I'm super stoked today because I have a designer who has actually designed a product that all of us, including me, use on a daily basis, and that's Slack. If you're still wondering, Andrew, super stoked to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Let's see you do the sneak peek gesture first.
Hold on. I want to make sure I got it. I don't know if I'm doing it right. You show me first.
You nailed it. I am just literally like my eyes are going everywhere. I see a lot of like projects that's going on over here. And immediately I am drawn to like, how do you go about organizing your Figma file?
Yeah, good question. So there's a couple things. Here I'm just looking at my recents. I use this view a lot because I jump around files often. But there are a couple things that you'll notice that are really important. So the first is that we have these covers, like these thumbnails pre-made for every file. So it makes it really easy to find the thing you're looking for. I find like, for example, down here, you can see Foundations Design Crit. Those little thumbnails, that's too small to really get an idea of what the file is. And so if every thumbnail looked that way, it's not super great. So yeah, we have these covers that have a lot of information, and I'll tell you a bit more about those, but that's just generally like finding my files. And then on a more personal level, I like to keep my sidebar somewhat organized. So I have my current projects over on the left. And again, I'm someone who needs to flip through many different projects every single day. So being able to quickly access the current things is just helpful for me. And then I have like access or quicker access to like our component libraries and my team files and things like that.
I love that. You're saving time, all this tab switching and searching. You pretty much have got everything like saved on your left side sidebar.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah.
I think as soon as I look at this, that purple banner, the channel IA and stuff, like those purple ones definitely grab my attention.
Yeah. You can see that we're at like, okay, we're both organized and disorganized at the same time because we're all humans, we're all designers. So as much as we like to be consistent with this beige looking one, every now and then we kick up a file, we cut some corners, just put the core information there, you go with the flow. So not everything is picture perfect.
I want to dig a little bit more into the cover design. So one thing that really stood out to me is in that cover for this big button mode, you've got definition right off the bat that's available. You've got the name. So talk to me a little bit more about that. Do you always try to include the definition? What does that mean?
Yeah. So there's a few things here actually, and this thing's actually missing some information. So I'll try to cover that as well. So on the cover itself, we know that this is the thumbnail for in that thumbnail view of all your projects. I'll actually just go grab the asset here. I believe if I just type in cover, it'll show up. So if I actually go grab just like the component that we use, let's go through it together. So the first thing that you're going to notice in the top left corner is the channel name. We do a ton of our work in Slack, of course. Typically, that's where all the conversation is happening, the discussions, the weekly meetings, the files are being shared there, the product briefs are being pinned. So that's an important part of organization. And when you work in Figma, that's not Slack, right? That's completely separate. So finding ways to bridge those things are really important to us and kind of keep that contextual information relevant. And we'll put a channel name there. And then of course we have the big feature name and in your description. But let's talk about these things down here. Okay, at Slack, in our product development process, we have a few different stages that we talk about. The first one is discovery, where we're doing user research, we're doing a lot more broader explorations of things, just noodling, really trying to figure things out. And I think once we gain a little bit of conviction, we start to really define what we're actually going to try to ship, and we start designing in that kind of mindset. We also do a lot of prototyping. The nice thing about working at Slack and working on Slack, and as people that always use Slack, is that we're able to just make things and try them all the time, right? And so a lot of that is happening in this definition phase. We also have this delivery phase. I'm going to be honest, and maybe I shouldn't be honest, but I'll be honest with you. I don't really tend to use these last few all too much. I'm a pretty bad ambassador of keeping these covers up to date. What I do is I'll set something to launch just to help indicate that, hey, you know what? We shipped the thing. We've done all the revisions. We've done all the iterations. That's what's important. Like when you think about looking in this view to see like where teams are at on their work, the things that I look for is, are you in discovery or definition, or have you actually shipped the thing?
So you being so specific about the stage in which the project is in, if your manager Anil goes into that Figma view to see all the files, I think he can also get a very high level glance at like where all the projects on his team are, like status wise.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's just like another thing that's really helpful. We're just trying to be mindful of, weaving our product design kind of process, visualizing it, having ways for like our stakeholders to come in and at a glance understand where the project is at. The other thing, and again, maybe I shouldn't just start with all the ways I break the rules, but this updated section, I should actually just rename this and just write like when the project started, because that's actually what I use this field for. And it's actually really nice. I like to be able to go through this and be like, oh yeah, we started this in July. We started this in March. We started this in August. It's actually quite nice. Maybe I'm the only one on my team who feels that way though. There you go.
So I got to ask you this, Andrew. Does Slack use Slack for design critiques?
Oh, that's actually a really interesting question. So the answer is actually yes. But before I show you how we do it, I think it's important to know that Slack actually stands for something. Slack actually stands for a searchable log of all communication and knowledge. Did you know that?
I did not. Wow.
Okay, so there's something special there. It's a searchable log. And so for us inside of Slack, what's important is our ability to search for answers, search for context. A month from now, we're in a discussion. Maybe something comes up and it's like, oh, we talked about that before. Where was that kind of answer? Where was that message? And so we're always searching. And for that reason, we like to do our design crits inside of Slack. That way we can always go back to those responses, those critiques, and read them, search for them, and things like that. So with that in mind, let me show you what that looks like on Slack. This is a little thread that we have here. And the thing that you're going to notice is that we have a little crit feedback legend. Now, the idea here is that if you're not the one presenting, we do a little live tweet, basically. As you present, all the rest of the designers add in their thoughts, their questions, and we try to use this crit feedback legend to help organize those things for the presenter afterwards. So for example, say whoever was presenting this day, they want to come back and go through all the questions that came up during their presentation. Here I can read, here's some questions, and you can see that everyone here is just using this crit feedback legend to prepend what they are commenting on. It's actually super powerful. It's really nice to be able to go back to these threads, go through them, double check some things that might have come up. And then there's actually one more thing that I should tell you about our crit sessions. So we have a presenter and they're presenting their work. We have the rest of the design team is almost like the audience, right? And then we also have a moderator. And so the idea there is, the whole design team is sending in all of these comments as things are happening, right? As they're presenting. But it's not the person presenting is going to be able to read all those things in real time and answer them, Like that would be really challenging. And so after the presentation, after all of these comments have come in, all this feedback has come in, the moderator kind of starts going through them and reads them out and encourages discussion. So they'll go through and be like, hey, let's start with all the questions that came up. And they'll start reading all the questions for the presenter so the presenter can answer them on the call. So super handy to be able to go back through threads in Slack as it relates to our design crits. And yeah, that's what we do.
This is so meta and it just blew my mind away.
Yeah.
I want to also dig deeper into your Figma file and just look at some of like, how do you organize your design iterations?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay. I actually have two ways of doing this. And I think as designers, it's actually important to just always be experimenting with your process and continuing to find ways that feel good and are rewarding for whatever it is you're trying to do. So yeah, let me show you a couple things. I'm someone who really likes to date their work. I find being able to go back in time and see the progression of the iterations is very helpful. And what I typically do is I have a page in a file called Andrew Space. This is assuming this is a project where maybe there's multiple designers collaborating together. So I like to just give myself a page. And in here, what I do is I just write whatever it is I'm designing and the date. And honestly, you can see this page just goes on forever. And many of the things that I have designed here, you'll probably see it come up again. For example, here's canvas and list headers. And then sure enough, the next week, here it is again. And what's actually important, oh, and here it is again the following day again. What's important here is that I didn't just overwrite or delete those previous iterations. I keep them there for like archival purposes almost. Another thing that I hear all the time from designers is, wow, it's so hard to capture my process for creating case studies on my portfolio or storytelling at work or what have you. This is my answer to that. Just like having an ability to very easily go back through all of the work I've done on a project. And I find this to be incredibly helpful. All the time I'm in conversations with folks and I'm like, oh yeah, I made some mock-ups for, that idea just a week ago. And I like pop back in here into my personal page and I like look a week ago and I find the thing. And also because I kind of name whatever it is I'm exploring, it also makes it really easy to find that stuff. And then I guess the other thing that's important with something like this is no engineer is going to be able to go through this and find whatever is worth taking, right? And so I really think it's important to separate out like my scratch pad area versus what I want people to actually refer to and look at as, say, like the good copy or what should be implemented. And so I like to keep a separate page here called specs. And you'll see here that I've just sectioned everything out. It's nice and clean. Everything's marked as ready for dev. I might have some little annotations here or there, but that's like idea.
What kind of annotations? Can you show us like an example?
Yeah, let's see. Here's like the smallest ever little note. Edit and remove only shows up if you have permissions in this menu. Just little things like that. I just never want to make assumptions, right? I don't want to assume my engineering partners or stakeholders can read my mind and my intentions. So I think it's just really important to over communicate. And then I think the last thing that I want to call out actually is this brief section. This is actually more of a scratch pad, but specifically for like briefing elements, things that we would have designed and mocked up to set up the whole project, to align stakeholders and things like that. And oftentimes what happens, let's see if I could find it here, is we will create a little design brief and it'll just illustrate the problem, have some like information here, talk about some of the goals, some of the principles we'll keep in mind. Pretty standard stuff, but it's just really nice to have a space to create the assets that we need to communicate what our goals and intentions are.
I have a couple of follow-up questions because this brief was mind-blowing. So the brief is created at the start of the project, but what's the goal of the brief? Like, why not just skip the brief and directly jump into those designs?
I think it's really important to have very clear goals and understandings of what you're trying to achieve. I think it's really important to have alignment. Slack is not a small product anymore. Slack's really big. And a lot of the work that I do spans very horizontally. The things that I am working on will affect many different teams. And so briefing elements and that canvas I showed you with that design brief, it's an effective way to communicate with stakeholders. And I think that's really important. Also, I think it's an opportunity to start ideating a little bit and show some options without like over solutioning at this phase of the project.
So the brief is basically like maybe a little bit lower fidelity designs or maybe wireframes.
Generally, yeah, totally. We'll just take little excerpts, maybe annotate them. Sometimes they're low fidelity, sometimes they're just using our design system. I think we should actually talk about fidelity a little bit, but with such a mature product and such a mature design system, it's actually just as fast to pull components from our library and assemble using, for a lack of better words, like these Lego pieces than it is to just draw by hand. So yeah, it's interesting, but these are just frames that we use for storytelling, for explaining problems and generating alignment ultimately.
So going back to that brief document, I really like how it talks about, so the brief, it talks about the problem. It mentions, I see the work in progress, and then it's very detailed with examples of what the problems are, what the goals you're mentioning. Principles, fascinating.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's nice to anchor some of the more nuanced decision making against principles we're trying to uphold. These things can help steer the strategy of whatever project it is we're working on.
And these are design principles or just general guiding principles?
A little bit of both. We have product principles. We definitely have some product principles that we uphold and bring to all of our projects. I think these are just like some general principles we thought in context or like directly relating to this project that we thought made a lot of sense.
And if you scroll down, I'm curious to see what else is mentioned in the brief feature set.
So we did a light audit of all of the like features and interactions within a channel. That way, as we looked at the initial designs, we were trying to find essentially containers and groupings for all of these features and making sure that things were accessible and we didn't lose anything.
All right, so you've got the feature sets, and then if you scroll down, there's more stuff. Like, it's blowing my mind away that a designer is creating this artifact, this brief.
Yeah. Sometimes, okay, I would say Slack's a pretty design-led, design-forward organization. We like to explore things in design and have that help inform our product strategy. I would say you don't see a lot of design briefs at Slack, but some for sure. Most times I would say product briefs are made by product managers. They can look very similar. I know I work with my PMs often to help them create the briefs. Sometimes we just start things before they're even on roadmaps. And when we do that, a design brief can be helpful to anchor us all together.
And when you share this across, it seems like it gets all the stakeholders aligned on what you're working on, what is the impact, and gets everyone's buy-in, I feel.
Yeah. And this kind of like container for the brief being a canvas inside of Slack already, the benefits there are that I can like comment on all these things, or comments from stakeholders. You can see people have left me some comments here. So if I go into this problem, there's like a bunch of stuff in here that people are commenting on. And so I think like it's just like a very collaborative way to get the project started ultimately.
I love this.
Now, I want to show you another example of almost briefing, but slightly different. In another project I have, I'm the only designer on this. And so you'll notice that I don't have Andrew's space in here. Instead, all of my iterations are on their own pages and they're all dated and named. But so rather than condensed into one page, they're just broken out. So a little nuanced difference there, depending on if I'm designing alone or if I'm designing with um, a few other designers. And then the other thing I've done specifically with this project is I have created a couple longer overviews for folks, and I try to keep them up to date. And in this overview, it talks through what the project is, why we're doing it, what the considerations were. So you can see I'm just really giving a high level overview of what's going on in this project. And then I get into the actual flows of all the work. And I try to keep this up to date as I do iterations. That way I can continually point people to the prototype link and they can help themselves and go through it and it stays relevant. So this is like a different kind of way of approaching sharing overviews and context. So in this case, it's a Figma prototype, and in the previous case, it was a canvas inside of Slack.
So instead of whenever a stakeholder asks you, hey, can you share the latest Figma link or designs for big button mode, rather than just dropping a Figma link, you're dropping a link to a Figma prototype that has the whole overview along with the project goals and context and all that information. Wow.
Yeah, for this project, I found that to be the easiest thing.
And then in this overview, when you share the design screens, do you just drop the design screens in there and then explain, or how does that work? Because it's an overview.
Yeah, there's a couple ways to go about this. Have you ever heard of clips on Slack?
No.
Essentially, they're like pre-recorded videos that you can like narrate over, like screen recordings. So another thing that I do is I would record myself narrating and talking through all of this. And so I could even just link to that. Other things that I've done, one thing that I've been doing is I've been experimenting with setting up these click-through prototypes, but I just add a couple bits of information along the bottom so that if you wanted to just click through the whole presentation, it could be really self-led because you have enough context to get you through every frame. So that's just another like really light example of like how I use Figma prototypes to like share context and share the work.
This is amazing. I'm
Yeah,
so glad because
super fun.
this took a completely different turn. Usually I just stick on like the base level stuff, like the Figma basics, like level 1, like why do you have a cover slide? How do you link your research findings? But this is the stuff that I think would be very valuable for like senior designers and stuff. I'm glad I took the pivot because I've been asking that question too many times.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, so much of our job is storytelling. And I don't think maybe we talk enough about that. But I think as a designer working in a large organization with many cross-functional partners and stakeholders, the core competency that I need to be really good at is explaining myself, storytelling, and bringing people through narratives and building understanding as we go. And I have just found that outputs like this Figma prototype that I've made, that's just like a quick click through that you can move through and you get all of the context you need with the design work, is just really helpful.
So one quick question there. So rather than giving just a click-through prototype to the engineering team or the stakeholder where they have to figure out where to click on the prototype, they're now just clicking through this walkthrough that you created. And I think if you go to presentation mode, I just want to see what they see. Like they probably see the designs along with some description in the bottom.
Yes. Now, I don't know if you're going to see much of that in this very specific one.
Okay.
I mean, there's a little bit here.
I love it how it works. Yes.
This was like an engineering feat. So I wanted to explain what we were doing. And so, yeah, I think like the ideal case is you can just sit in this and hit your right arrow through all the slides. And there's enough context on each slide to carry you through the work and build understanding.
Because I'm building a feature where I got to like work with the engineering team. And in my mind, I was like, I'm going to create this click-through prototype. But then I'm like, I still have to get on a call and explain to them. But then if I just steal your idea, It's like they can just do a walkthrough on their own and read the subtitles at the bottom.
Yeah. Honestly, it's all we're trying to do is over communicate and eliminate
Yeah,
assumptions. And I'm going to tell you a secret.
please.
Pixel perfect designs in Figma don't really mean much at the end of the day. What you ship is what matters at the end of the day. So if what it takes is you over communicating to make sure that you get exactly what you wanted, then that's what's worth it, you know?
I'm having one of those really like mind blown moments because I think I was more fixated on that pixel perfect stuff and specs. But then I think what I'm understanding from you is this engineering team might be new to this feature. There's a lot of onboarding that has to happen, and explaining like you have here how it works, subtitles. I think that's going to be more beneficial to them than a pixel perfect drop down.
Okay. Can I give you a real example?
Yes.
Okay. In some of this work that I'm doing around adding tabs to channels, I wanted the first time a user pins a message in a channel, we show them the pins tab. It shows up. We give it a little bloop of color, a little yellow kind of fade in, fade out. And then the coach mark, this little pop-up here, anchors on and shows up. And then the user can read it, they get the education, and then they're able to move on. But look at the static visual. That doesn't tell that story. The static visual says we should pop out this pin tab. It'll be colored in yellow and the coach mark will be there. So there's a lot of assumptions between what I am envisioning, what I intend, and what's actually shown here. And so what you got to do, all right, and you're about to see my named dated system in action here. I'm looking for a thing that says bloops. It's here somewhere. It's not that far back. Here's bloops. Okay, great. Watch this. I'm going to play this. Let's get this prototype going. Okay, here's the example of taking that static mock and now just being like, okay, here's actually what I expect. When a user hits pin to this conversation, we're going to pin. The pin tab's going to show up. It's going to be yellow. The yellow's going to come in. It's going to fade out, and we're going to put the coach mark up there. All right, great. That's what I want. Not the static mock where it's always yellow. There's a little bit of life there. There's a little bit of staggered motion to help you understand that the action has been complete and reinforce what's happening here. And it's really important to prototype and to explain yourself. Sure, this is one with motion, so obviously you need the prototype, but I'm sure I could probably come up with other examples where a static mock doesn't have the motion and you just got to communicate. You just got to tell your stakeholders and your engineering partners exactly what you intend.
So for this specific thing, would you just like record like a small clip of this interaction or just share the specific prototype link with the team?
Both. I did exactly that. So I went back to Slack, into the channel tabs project channel, and I recorded a little clip of literally this interaction that we just saw. And I narrated over it. I explained what was happening. I played it a couple times. And then I grabbed the link to the flow and I added into the message as well. And yeah, that to me is an adequate way of kind of communicating some of the expectations. I know it's not perfect. There's no assess details with all the numbers and everything. That kind of at least starts to get the vision across.
Wow. This is phenomenal. Hey, this is Jay. It means the world to me that you watch this video. If you want to unlock the AI design and growth design interviews with designers at some of the top companies in the world, then head on over to sneakpeek.design and subscribe to the newsletter.